A senior Russian official is saying that NATO had a hand in the attacks of the armed forces of Ukraine. And this is coming from Konstantin Gavrilov. NATO members helped Kiev attack Russian airfields. Konstantin Gavrilov, head of the Moscow delegation at the talks in Vienna on military security and arms control, told news outlet RIA Novosti. As the diplomat recalled, Russia had repeatedly pointed out that the West, led by the United States, is increasingly drawn into the conflict, becoming a participant in it. And now, once again, the facts indicate that the member countries of the North Atlantic Alliance really had a hand in Kiev's terrorist provocations against the Russian strategic airfields Dyagilevo and Engels, Gavrilov said. Now, according to Gavrilov, Kiev was actually giving a public order to carry out this perfidious provocation. He recalled the words of the Latvian foreign minister on November 30th in the NATO Council, who said that possible Ukrainian strikes on military targets deep in Russia would be justified. And during 2022, work was carried out at the Kharkiv aviation plant to modernize the aforementioned UAVs with the partnership of specialists from the Kiev Design Bureau Look and the American corporation Raytheon Technologies. The range of this drone is up to 1,000 kilometers, the head of the delegation said. Now, Gavrilov added that it's clear to Moscow in which direction they plan to use the drone after the modernization. At the same time, as the diplomat emphasized, most of the targets on which the armed forces of Ukraine strike are determined by the Western masters of the Kiev regime. And the aforementioned Tu-141 strike UAVs are aimed at the target using the American Global GPS satellite system. And he says, by the way, the U.S. and its allies have long been actively using various space systems for reconnaissance and information support of the armed forces of Ukraine, including for the purpose of opening places of deployment, routes of movement, and actions of Russian troops, Gavrilov said. Now, so he's making a direct accusation, Rick, that U.S. forces, one way or another, and NATO forces were directly involved in the drone attacks that took place on Russian soil. Your thoughts on this particular story, on Gavrilov's comments?
It's a very serious accusation, because you have a high-level Russian official pointing his finger at the United States and NATO, saying, we know that you were involved. We know that you trained the Ukrainians. We know that you gave them the technology, and we know that you're helping them with GPS coordinates to pinpoint the targets inside Russia. The Ukrainian military in the past week has attacked several, I think 3 Russian Air Force bases, and actually blew up 2 Tu-95 strategic nuclear bombers. Very serious turn of events this week. Now the Russians are saying, we know that America and NATO are behind it. That's as close as you can get to the line of declaring it to be an act of war. And we're days or weeks away from Russia making that declaration of war against NATO and the United States of America. That's what I want people to understand. We are inching day by day closer and closer to an official declaration of war between Russia and the United States of America.
And even though the Ukrainians aren't getting direct do these orders to hit targets in Russia, they are getting them secondhand. Like Gavrilov said, the Latvian ambassador telegraphed that message, basically saying, you know, it's possible we could hit targets in Russia. Rick, on the way home last night, I was scanning through satellite radio and heard an interview with the CEO of Raytheon on CNBC, and he says that they provide direct intelligence support for drone activity in Ukraine. He says if we can see a Russian tank and we can target it. And he says their company does that for the Ukrainians. They do it directly for the Ukrainians, that Raytheon is providing direct informational support. And so even though it's not the United States itself that's doing it, it's United States interests and companies that are being directly involved in the activities going on. So we could make the assumption that Raytheon helped the Ukrainians target those nuclear bombers that were sitting on Russian airfields. It wouldn't be that big of a leap of logic, would it?
No, and I don't think Raytheon is doing it as some kind of community service.
Right.
They're doing it in partnership with the Pentagon and NATO nations. Raytheon's a defense contractor. They make their money selling weapons to countries that want to have a war. And they are assisting Ukraine to target Russian soldiers and military assets. Raytheon is participating in the war. Doc, if there was a shooter in your neighborhood and one of your neighbors was handing magazines of ammo to him, does that not make the neighbor an accessory to mass murder?
Yeah, he's directly complicit in it.
That's what the United States and Germany and France and the other NATO nations are doing. They are involved in the war. And at some point, Russia will declare war on the United States of America.